You were trying to describe it as letterboxes and as robbers, these women that are face masks. And by the way, we shouldn't be dignifying it by calling the face veil. It's a mask, and we should call a spade a spade. And this idea that these people have a so-called right to conceal their identity in public, no one has an automatic fundamental right to conceal his or her face in public. I don't have a right to conceal my ugly face in public. Why should anyone else have that right? Right, all these emblems, wild bushy beards, hijabs, headscarf, face masks, whatever, what are they? These are just indicative of a gateway theology towards extremism and fundamentalism. By themselves they're not, but it's the gateway theology. And we should be combating this because this theology comes from where? It comes from Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis, the Salafis, and so forth. And by the way, our great friends, inverted commas, the Saudis, they gave us ISIS, they gave us Al-Qaeda, they gave us Taliban. Okay, so why are we having this type of perverse Islam making inroads in this country?
Would the vast majority of Muslims living in this country right now, would they, maybe not publicly, because we often have Muslim community leaders speaking out on behalf of ordinary Muslims in the country, would they actually secretly quite welcome the ban on the face veil, given that the vast majority don't wear it themselves?
Absolutely, because I think, you see, these masked women, they tell others they are more pious than the rest. But what I do know as a fact, that these masked women are all younger people. Their own mothers, and especially their grandmothers, never cover their faces. So my question to these masked women, that means your mother and your grandmother were not Muslim. I mean, it's this type of nonsensical, feigned piety that is now becoming fashionable. We should be resisting this tribal contraption that has nothing to do with Islam, that masquerades as Muslim and has poisoned relations between the indigenous community and immigrant Muslims like myself.
You're Sikh, not Muslim, but you're allowed to say things because you've got brown skin, not white skin. And women are allowed to say things that men aren't allowed to say. We are now in a situation with our identity politics where you're only allowed to comment on things that you yourself are.
Well, I think this is a debate about the communities or that religion. So I think Muslims talking amongst themselves about how they want to see their religion portrayed or either how they want to demonstrate it is quite a healthy thing. I think every community should debate that. I think it does become challenging for people not from the community who don't walk in those shoes, who don't understand the faith, who don't have that closeness to it, to have commentary on it. And that's absolutely right, that we shouldn't be casting aspersions on how other people treat their faith. It's up to them to decide. And I welcome...
Except where it affects other people. Except where it affects the outer world. So again, when you choose to cover your face in public, you're totally isolating yourself completely, and you're saying basically you only get respect because you've got your face covered or your head covered, and therefore implying that the women who don't do that don't deserve respect. I'm sorry, you are making a statement to me as a woman.
Yes, but what I always look at, and I do look at this, is India. India, where you've got a cacophony of different races and religions all living together, all kind of merged. They don't have these challenges. They have had obviously issues between the major.
India's got a heck of a lot of challenges when it comes to religion and treatment of women and the
like. Yes, but what I mean is multiple races and faiths do live together. There are different issues about sexism and various other things.
Okay, that's an interesting point. You would not go and have your tooth extracted and say, oh, look at me, I didn't have any pain relief. You wouldn't go and have open heart surgery and say, oh, aren't I brilliant? I had a much better experience because I didn't have pain relief.
The difference may be that birth is a physiological process that we're going to do. We're not necessarily going to have heart surgery in our lifetime, hopefully. But
no, it's a natural part of being a human being. However, we also know in nature, actually, about half the baby, if it was just left to nature, half the babies would die. A good percentage of the women giving birth would die as a result of birth, and it would be very long and very painful for a lot of women. Now, the reality is we are bigger as the human beings in the West. We are getting bigger, not just fatter, but taller and bigger. Babies are getting bigger, and actually the birthing process can often therefore be a lot longer and a lot more painful. It does seem to me...
You're absolutely right.
But it does seem to me it's a strange thing for this move. All the medical interventions that we've got into the birthing process have actually meant that we have more mums and babies alive and healthy than ever before. And yet we're somehow in this weird anti-medicine, anti-intervention idea among a lot of women. The idea that actually doing everything naturally is better. When we did it naturally, an awful lot of people died.
So can I suggest why there may be this debate going on? And for many people, they have adverse effects from some of the help. Now, I've been working with birth for over 30 years, and I frequently would meet a woman if I'm on a busy NHS hospital shift, just helping at that hospital. She could be halfway through labour, screaming for an epidural. If I talk to her calmly and she starts to breathe and she maybe gets into a pool and I offer her the pool for 1 minute, if she doesn't like it, she can have her epidural.
Yeah, I did the pool.
So many women. And when I worked in New Zealand, 70% of the women I was with got into the pool and they chose not to have an epidural. So that could become an unnecessary intervention that could have another consequence that they wouldn't appreciate.
The article was about defending these people's rights to wear these clothes in the United Kingdom because we weren't going to legislate against it and supporting that position. I think the article should be taken in its context. The fact that he then didn't take the rise out of a whole bunch of other religions and clothes that we wear and exclude us in some ways from other people, whatever our background or religion. Very often that's what those exotic dress codes are designed to do.
And just finally, is this actually not about the burqa and not about anything else other than Boris Johnson wants to be leader of the Tory parties and he's appealing to Tory grassroots members and supporters? We know 60% of the British public support a ban on the burqa. Although again, he doesn't, but that's obviously been lost in the furore over what he did have to say. That he knew exactly what he's doing. He's a clever man. He's basically stirring things up, and he's appealing to the Tory party faithful.
I rather doubt for 1 minute he thought this article was going to get that reaction. And the idea, given Boris's working practices as a columnist, where by reputation his copy would arrive at absolutely in the last minute. He is brilliant and he's able to sort of write stuff at speed to deadlines. It's highly entertaining. But if this was going to be part of some carefully crafted Machiavellian project to get him back seriously in the running to be Tory party leader, and the exact weight he put on particular words in this article, I think he's stretching the point a bit.
Well, he was actually defending the right of people to...
I know. So what should he apologise for?
What he apologise for was saying, look, I was trying to make a liberal argument and have caused offence to large numbers of people.
So wait a minute, so he should apologise because he's caused offence. There are lots of people who get offended by a lot of things. Because someone's offended by something, does that mean someone has to apologise? Maybe the person could just be offended and we all move on with our lives.
Well, indeed. I'm in the political business myself, and I have in the past caused offence in this way unintentionally. And the sensible and gracious thing to do is to simply say, look, we got this wrong.
Wait a minute. So you're saying he should apologise just to get the row over, but he hasn't really done anything wrong? Or has he done something wrong?
No, I think it was insensitive, and it has the effect of stereotyping.
What do you mean stereotyping? The burqa and the niqab, that's literally what they do. They make you a faceless, nameless, unidentified block of black fabric. You're not a human being. You're not a woman. You're not an individual. That is the job of a burqa and a niqab, is to stereotype a Muslim woman. What he said was perfectly within the law. It was a perfectly reasonable comment. We've already seen the vast majority of people in this country don't think he should apologise. They think he should go further, and actually there should be a ban on the burqa. You're saying he should apologise because people took offence. People take offence at lots of different things, whether or not they're actually offensive or not. Does that mean we have to apologise because 1 or 2 or 5 people or 5,000 people take offence at something that we say?
Well, if it was 1 or 2 or 5, obviously not. But if there are thousands of people who are offended, and I find myself in this position quite often, there are a whole lot of very sensitive issues around race and culture and sexual identity, and you can unintentionally cause a great deal of offence to them. And I think the sensible thing, if you are a politician in this position, is to say, look, I've got this wrong. I'm sorry I've upset large numbers of people, and will be more sensitive in future.
Well, I think that what McDonald is doing there is more like a pop-up. So they are trying it for a while, but it's following this initiative that they've done with their table service, which is a roll out now in all their estate. And of course, they need to differentiate themselves from their competitors. They need to up their game. They need to up quality. And a lot of other casual dining restaurants, like, for example, Pizza Hut, have done that in the last 5 years to 10 years. They just want to make sure they are relevant to their market. And service, it really is the only differentiator. So they need to push the envelope.
I mean, that's the thing. It's actually an awful lot of people who would love to, they'll eat at your restaurant and they'll go to other Michelin-starred restaurants, but they also love a good burger or a bit of fried chicken. I mean, different food for different occasions. Are you ever partial to a McDonald's burger or chicken McNuggets or whatever?
Well, when I got your text, Julia, this morning, I laughed because actually last week was the first time I've been for many, many years. And my son wanted to go and I went. Yeah. And I saw their burger range, their luxury burger range. And I had one. He had a normal McDonald, Big Mac. Yep. I had the burger range, and it was delicious. It was really good. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed it. And this is it, you see, because they are upping the quality. So they have transformed their estate. They're upping the quality of the food. And our service is the last piece of the jigsaw. And I think this is a natural course of event with what's happening now. Yeah. Restaurant needs to be better. And some burger chain who used to be, fantastic, maybe 10 years ago, for example, these big names, now you can see that their value is slipping and the quality is slipping. But McDonald is consistently improving
they consistently
and delivering.
Do well. Well, the other thing is, you know exactly what you're going to get. Can I ask you, do you think that if you change the surroundings, if you serve exactly the same food, but it's in a polystyrene box, that you serve that on linen and have a string quartet and someone brings it to the table and you have nice cutlery, do you think it tastes better?
I certainly do. I think it's about, our industry, hospitality industry, is all about expectation and perception. Yeah. And the perception that they are giving to people is they're fresher, it's nicer, it tastes better, it's more quality, and it's more relevant. What worked 20 years ago is not going to work today.
I think that a lot of your listeners will be deeply worried about the state of our democracy and free speech. Unfortunately, under the new code of conduct, if a formal complaint is lodged, and I believe that reports are that Lord Sheikh, a Conservative peer, has lodged a formal complaint, it has to be investigated. I hope it's dismissed immediately as frivolous and vexatious. If it does go to a full disciplinary panel, I think there's huge questions, given that Theresa May, the Prime Minister, and Brandon Lewis, the party chairman, have basically already said that Boris shouldn't have said it and should apologise, that they're already predetermined. I think it's a very dark day for our democracy and for free speech, and I'm deeply worried that this policy is being adopted by the Conservative Party. If we're not the party of freedom and free speech, then who is? In my experience, Christianity is not sacrosanct from being the butt of people's jokes and humour. This is I believe we should live in a free country where people have the right to, within the law, speak their mind. And if everything that someone finds offensive, the polarisation of politics, I think we'll be having investigations every single day.
You would not go and have your tooth extracted and say, oh, look at me, I didn't have any pain relief. You wouldn't go and have open heart surgery and say, oh, aren't I brilliant? I had a much better experience because I didn't have pain relief.
The difference may be that birth is a physiological process that we're going to do. We're not necessarily going to have heart surgery in our lifetime, hopefully. But
no, it's a natural part of being a human being. However, we also know in nature, actually, about half the baby, if it was just left to nature, half the babies would die. A good percentage of the women giving birth would die as a result of birth, and it would be very long and very painful for a lot of women. Now, the reality is we are bigger as the human beings in the West. We are getting bigger, not just fatter, but taller and bigger. Babies are getting bigger, and actually the birthing process can often therefore be a lot longer and a lot more painful. It does seem to me...
You're absolutely right.
But it does seem to me it's a strange thing for this move. All the medical interventions that we've got into the birthing process have actually meant that we have more mums and babies alive and healthy than ever before. And yet we're somehow in this weird anti-medicine, anti-intervention idea among a lot of women. The idea that actually doing everything naturally is better. When we did it naturally, an awful lot of people died.
So can I suggest why there may be this debate going on? And for many people, they have adverse effects from some of the help. Now, I've been working with birth for over 30 years, and I frequently would meet a woman if I'm on a busy NHS hospital shift, just helping at that hospital. She could be halfway through labour, screaming for an epidural. If I talk to her calmly and she starts to breathe and she maybe gets into a pool and I offer her the pool for 1 minute, if she doesn't like it, she can has her epidural.
Yeah, I did the pool.
So many women. And when I worked in New Zealand, 70% of the women I was with got into the pool and they chose not to have an epidural. So that could become an unnecessary intervention that could have another consequence that they wouldn't appreciate.
If my GP suddenly decided wearing a niqab or a burqa, or my daughter's teacher, her physics teacher, a highly trained, brilliant woman, but wore a niqab or a burqa, would I be entitled to say, I would like you to remove those items when you're dealing with me and my child? Would that be acceptable, or is that me demonising a Muslim woman?
There are certain situations in which it's not appropriate to
answer that question. Would it be okay for me to say that, as long as I say it respectfully and politely?
There are mechanisms in which those situations can be addressed. For example, at an airport, going through airport
Akila,
security,
answer the question I actually answered you.
That it's not appropriate.
It's not. I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to say I don't want to be treated, and I don't want my daughter taught by somebody who doesn't show their face.
And if you feel that you go to your GP surgery and, somebody's not dealing with you appropriately, then you have a mechanism in order to deal with that. And that's
a mechanism. You know what the mechanism is? The mechanism is take your burqa or your niqab off.
Women. But if you then, met a GP and then you started calling her names, that would be demonising.
Who was the talk?
That would be abuse.
Akila, who suggested calling people names? I've gone from saying, if I respectfully and politely say, I would like you to show your face when you're dealing with me or my child, where did we get to calling names? Why have you taken it to that when I've talked about something different?
It's possible to have a conversation without demonising, without...
I've just said that. And so if I say to a Muslim woman wearing the burqa or the niqab, I don't want you to treat my child or teach my child with your face covered, and she refuses, what should I do then?
Boris Johnson didn't even talk about those examples. And I think this is the problem.
I've just asked you about those specific examples, and you are refusing to answer the... Akila, let's not even bother anymore. Akila, you're just going to keep talking. You're answering a question someone asked you yesterday. I mean, I'm asking you specific questions, trying to have a sensible debate about how we handle this, and you just keep... I'm telling you, this is where we've got to in this country. We can't have a sensible debate about this.
It's a legacy that he has. Don't forget, in 2005, he said something very similar. He said that it's Islam that is the problem, and Islamophobia is a natural reaction to Islam. He is now saying Muslim women who choose to wear burqa look like letterboxes or burglars, or robbers.
No, bank robbers, yeah.
Bank robbers, yes. All of these things indicate something very simple. He definitely has a disdain for Islam and those who try, at least in their own ways, practice their faith. If he was saying that he has a problem with Islam, then keep it as a religion and criticize the religion. That's not a problem.
You know as well as I do that the burqa and the niqab is not sort of an innocent piece of cloth that's meaningless. It's not. It's a statement. It's a statement of political ideology rather than religion. There's no requirement in Islam for women to wear either garment, as we know, because the vast majority, hundreds of millions of Muslim women don't wear either a niqab or a burqa. And we've seen women in places like Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq, when they're finally freed from wearing it, are delighted to be rid of these garments. But the reality is this garment is there purely because a woman must show modesty, or basically she will be disrespected. So a woman must cover her face, cover her body, so that a man won't sexually assault her. Now that, to me...
What do you say to women who wear the same burqa type of clothing in sub-Saharan Africa and in Middle East where they're not Muslims?
Okay, that's my whole point. It's nothing to do with Islam. It's a cultural thing.
Wait,
I'm sure that wearing that clothing in the middle of a desert might be quite practical, but it's not very practical in central Manchester or London.
You have to allow me to finish my sentence.
Only if you stick to the point.
I will. If people have a choice, the choice is that they can choose whatever they want to wear That's what our democracy is about, and that's what we're celebrating.
You can't wear a balaclava walking down the street. You can't.
Wait for a second. I have, as a person, personal choices, likes and dislikes. I should keep them to myself, or in a civilized way, have a discussion and a conversation. But if I call Boris Johnson a mophead for his hairstyle, if I call people wearing short clothes perhaps as tart, I think I'm being insulting deliberately. There is no need for that.
We're not talking about AJMAL. No, answer the question I made. The point about these garments, this is not the same as someone wearing a white T-shirt or a blue T-shirt. These are statements of particular values.
Have you asked a woman?
Yes, I've spoken to dozens of women who wear burqas and niqabs.
And they said this is a political statement.
No, they don't say it. It's a political ideology. This is
but if
the women who are wearing this garment in the UK today. It is a statement of a political extremist ideology, and you know that.
He apologised to the Jewish community, but his apology he's not sorry enough to adopt the full IRA definition.
But also just the sort of the clanging nature of the fact of releasing a statement on a Friday evening when observant Jews wouldn't be able to respond, not actually allowed under their religious beliefs to write or to take part in any work. I mean, look, it just felt a bit rude, frankly, what he did then. But that did not stem the flow of criticism. Then we had this extraordinary interview with Tom Watson, which obviously carried out on the Saturday with the Observer, which then went to the Observer. And now we have seen a huge campaign to force Tom Watson out as a result.
Yeah, so Tom Watson wrote what now turned out to be a brave statement, but was a simple statement of fact that if Labour doesn't sort its act out on this issue, we might never recover with Britain's Jews. And of course, he is absolutely right about that. And, Labour being the party of equality, that should be a pretty basic.
But Tom Watson would have known that there would be this backlash. The reality is, he's always been the sort of broker in between the Blairite sort of moderates on the right of the party and the Corbynists on the left. He's sort of in the middle ground, a sort of a brown-eyed figure, but and has somehow managed to sort of stay in situ, stay in post. Of course, elected quite separately from Jeremy Corbyn as on his own personal mandate as deputy leader. But he would have known there would be a backlash from the Corbynistas to this, but he did it anyway. Does that suggest that he feels the tide is turning?
Well, Julia, every time anybody speaks out about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, you get more of a backlash against those who call out anti-Semitism than those who commit anti-Semitism. That is, I'm afraid, one of the current realities of the British Labour Party.
There is no country in the world that trades just on World Trade Organization terms. Not one. Every other country has trade agreements of some kind.
Well, doesn't that suggest that they will want to therefore have trade deals with us? I mean, that undermines your argument rather than makes it.
In that case, why can the MFOX not negotiate it?
Well,
if it's in everyone's interest to have it.
But hold on a minute, Lord Adonis, no, come on. You know, Lord Adonis, don't keep asking the question, Lord Amy Johnson. You know perfectly well.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Lord Adonis,
it's a big question. Why can it not be negotiated?
Lord Adonis, you have to wait for the answer. The entire reason why is because legally, under the Constitution, we are actually not allowed to be negotiating openly for any trade deals. We can't have trade deals sitting on the table because we're not even allowed to be in negotiations under the Lisbon Treaty.
Let's forget Andrew Adonis, who is a nice chap, but he is a fanatic and he just makes things up as he goes along. But I think that it is unfortunate that we have a very weak government led by a Prime Minister who is simply not up to the job. And that is unfortunate, but that's where we are at the present.
So, okay, so should the Brexiteers, should they be ousting her over the summer?
No, I think that look, I'm no longer a member of the House of Commons and haven't been for a considerable time. It will be for the Conservative Party, first in the House of Commons and secondly in the country at large, to decide when a change of leadership should be secured. I mean, clearly, given the last election, it would be crazy to go into another election with Theresa May as leader. But there's no hurry. The next election doesn't have to be till 2022. And it'll be up to them, up to the Conservative Party, to choose the leader who they think is most likely to save us from the Corbyn, McDonald, Marxist alternative.
Have you had any treatment to preserve your ability to have children biologically?
No, I haven't. When I did this 10 years ago, it wasn't something that was offered, and I'd reached a point in my life where that I was well, I didn't really think that I wanted any more children anyway.
You already have children?
Yes.
Oh, okay, right.
I think the point that this brings up is two things. First of all, about this treatment being available, what it does highlight is the fact that the NHS is an organisation with scarce resources, and the allocation of resources is important. And what I would say is that the response of the other caller also shows a certain amount of ignorance as to what transgender actually is and the sort of processes that these people are going through. I found it quite extraordinary that somebody would come on the radio show and say, well, it's an unfortunate side effect of having this type of treatment that it makes you sterile. Well, as a matter of fact, if you are looking to have a medical transition to what would cosmetically resemble the opposite sex, you are going to have your reproductive system ripped out of your body. This is exactly what happens, and I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. I think as well that this is painting in a very, very stark way the actual real-life effects of these types of treatment, which are being thrown on children and being thrown on young adults by groups like Mermaid, who are quoted in the Guardian piece that came out at the weekend. And very typical for Mermaids, what they are doing as ever by describing this treatment as being life-saving is that they are, again, standing on the graves of the very small number of gender dysphoric children who have killed themselves in order to attempt to leverage further economic and political support for their cause.
Instead of actually trying to address this problem, he makes these half-hearted, mealy-mouthed apologies and statements when the pressure becomes unbearable. Even then, he doesn't go far enough. And the rest of the time, he seems busily trying to use the party machinery either to excuse anti-Semites from disciplinary processes, or using the disciplinary machinery to go and victimise people like Ian Austin and Margaret Hodge who stand up to him. Jeremy Corbyn promised in his Guardian article to root out anti-Semites. And just as an observation, his Facebook page where he posted that article about rooting out anti-Semites, it's not just that it's got one or two anti-Semitic comments, it's all anti-Semitic comments from people saying, don't you give in to those Jews, Jeremy, you stick at it. We're 100% behind you. Each of those comments, in many cases, getting hundreds of likes. So if he can't even root out anti-Semitism on his Facebook page, it's really quite hard to take him seriously. 2014, we were talking about anti-Semitic crime and how worrying that was. 2015, suddenly we were talking about anti-Semitism in politics, and the only thing that changed there was Jeremy Corbyn coming in. And the reason for that is that there wasn't really a problem with anti-Semitism in politics before Jeremy
Certainly
Corbyn
not in the main
along.
parties. I mean, the BNP, yes, but not in any of the mainstream parties.
Exactly.
If a woman wants to wear what she wants, and if she wants to cover her face, then surely that is in line with the whole freedoms that we are purporting in the secular democracy.
Well, no, I would argue that's not the case, actually, because there are other reasons. It's not just a feminist issue. If you tell a woman that basically she's a whore if she doesn't cover her face, then is that a choice in any meaningful sense? But also the key thing is we have lots of limitations on what we can wear. We can't wear T-shirts that are offensive in the street. We can't. If someone walked down the road with a swastika on their T-shirt, they would expect to have people make comments and express their anger and say they're offended. I find walking along the streets, I do pretty much most days in London, next to women who are wearing full face veils, I find that offensive to me. Now, I'm not going to go and challenge those women. I'm not going to give them a dirty look or be aggressive or abusive. And if anyone were to them, I would absolutely step in to help them. However, I don't believe they should have the right to do that, because I don't think that is respectful to the mores of our society.
I think it's a little bit too much for you just to find what somebody else wears offensive.
No, no, it's not. It's
almost
not
like you're having your own religious dogma.
No, I'm an atheist, but I also believe in.
But atheism, with your own religious view, that this atheism is a dogma which you want to make people wear what.
I believe in. No, I believe in freedom. However, all of our freedoms are limited. The rights of one person to do one thing will often infringe on the rights of someone else to do something. The need for our society to be integrated, for men and women from the Muslim faith to be integrated with other members of other faiths and no faiths in our country, is more important than the rights of women to wear the burqa. You know perfectly well, as well as I do. No, let me finish, Omar. Omar, you know perfectly well that the burqa and the niqab are not worn by the vast majority of Muslim women in the world, because it's not actually dictated by the Islamic faith at all. It's a medieval culture. It's a medieval dress. It's got nothing to do with Islam.
Would you say if a woman was scantily dressed, it would be fair to say she looks like a prostitute or a tart? I don't think you would like that. Nobody would.
I think you'll find I probably say things like that all the time. I think we make judgments about what people wear all the time. It depends the context. She's wearing a bikini on a beach. No. If she's got every single part of her body hanging out walking on the street, yeah, I'd say she looked cheap and tarty. Yes, I would.
So, we use words that we want to describe people with, but with our freedom to speak, we have to be responsible. And if we fail to be responsible, and the consequences of that, Boris Johnson is not an ordinary person. He used to be our foreign secretary. He's the prime minister in the making, at least in the eyes of some people. He's a very influential person. He writes a column in the Telegraph newspaper. So it's not an ordinary person if he writes that.
So I'm offended by a woman wearing a burqa or a niqab. So do I have a right to have, imams apologise to me for seeing that, where people are demanding that Boris should apologise for using words that accurately, if not very pleasantly, describe the appearance of a burqa or niqab, but I'm not allowed to sort of apparently be offended by someone wearing the actual garment. Do you see how a lot of people might find that a bit strange?
No, because you're comparing an apple and a pear. What you see with your eyes, you have a choice to walk away.
No, I don't. Not if I'm sitting on the train opposite a lady wearing a burqa or a niqab.
Or the other way around. If a woman was walking around scantily dressed, do I have the right to not see? No, because I'll see them inevitably. Ultimately.
But you don't think women should walk around scantily dressed, do you?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think there should be rules about that?
I think so.
You think what sort of rules? What would you count as scantily dressed, and what would you count as acceptable? Just so I've got an idea.
I think, for example, we already have a rule in this country which, if you're walking around scantily dressed, you could be arrested for it. At least if you're walking around. If you're walking around in certain areas, if you walk into the Parliament scantily dressed, I don't think you'll be allowed.
Should Boris Johnson apologise, and if so, for what?
No, he shouldn't. And I'm actually very disappointed in Boris. And I'm disappointed because he could have used his article to a much better end. He could have called outright for the banning of the burqa and for the release and liberation of many women in the UK who are completely isolated and invisible and segregated from society. And I also don't agree with his comment that women should be free to choose what they wear, because many of these women aren't even free to choose their own husband.
Do you think he should have perhaps been a bit more careful in the language he chose?
Well, yeah, there are people in Westminster, people who they're so outraged, who are utterly terrified that at some stage, any day soon, Boris may make a challenge for the leadership and their position in number 10. And those people, of course, are all going to come out, particularly those on the Remain side of the Brexit argument, are going to come out and they are going to attack him in force. Boris is one of the most intelligent people I know. He will know what he said. He will not have put that column out without analysing those words. He's had massive support. He knows he will have got that. And of course, there are people in Westminster who know he will have massive support for what he said to the country. And will be very angry about it.
He's being accused of not just causing offence, but of Islamophobia. And there are claims, counter-claims after with Labour and the accusation of anti-Semitism. The idea is that the Tories have an Islamophobia problem in the same way that the Labour Party has an anti-Semitism problem. Do you think that is the case?
is absolutely ridiculous. And as I've said, that you cannot even compare. I mean, I understand that Labour want to throw any smoke screens they can in front of their desperate anti-Semitism problem that they have in their party, which is eating their party alive. I understand why they're doing that, but it is absolutely incomparable. You cannot even begin to compare the two issues.